Welcome to the Solimi Dreams channel. Gently turn off the lights in your room, slip on your headphones or set the volume just right and close your eyes. I hope sleep finds you peacefully, perhaps even before the story comes to an end. So now, without delay, let me softly begin tonight's story. The Hollow. Beneath the sprawling streets of Riverton, Illinois, lay an intricate network of tunnels and storm drains stretching for miles under the unsuspecting feet of the town's residents. Above ground, Riverton was picturesque, an idyllic Midwestern suburb filled with white picket fences, neatly trimmed lawns, and vibrant community fairs. But beneath this facade, hidden under rusted iron grates and concealed entrances, lurked a darkness that fed on whispered fears and lost souls. Nobody knew precisely how the legend began. Some said it traced back to the city's founding in the late 1800s, to times when mining tunnels snaked beneath Riverton's very foundations. Others whispered about a series of disappearances dating from the 1970s, when local teenagers dared each other to explore the dark labyrinth, never to emerge again. The story was simple yet chilling. Beneath Riverton, in the heart of the old sewer system, there lived something, an entity known only as the Hollow. Witnesses who claimed to have seen it spoke of a humanoid figure, pale as moonlight, with limbs grotesquely elongated, eyes black as pitch, teeth sharp and jagged, smiling perpetually with a ghastly grin. It moved silently, fluidly through the shadows, hunting anyone foolish enough to wander into its subterranean lair. For decades, parents warned their children to stay clear of storm drains, fearing their loved ones might vanish without a trace. It became tradition, an urban legend perpetuated at campfires and sleepovers, nothing more than a chilling tale, or so many chose to believe. Ethan Donovan, however, wasn't one of them. Ethan had spent most of his childhood in Riverton, obsessed with its dark folklore. He collected old newspaper clippings detailing unsolved disappearances, listened avidly to every whispered story, and now, at 26, he had returned home after several years away. Ethan, an investigative journalist by profession, was convinced the legend of the Hollow wasn't just another harmless bedtime story. It was a dark truth hidden beneath the surface, one he was determined to expose. Arriving at Riverton just days before Halloween, Ethan immediately felt the familiar, eerie tension that hung heavily in the air, as if the entire town held its breath, anticipating tragedy. Even the weather seemed complicit. Persistent rains had swollen the rivers and filled the storm drains, causing an ominous echoing from beneath the streets. He wasted no time visiting old acquaintances, pressing for information about the tunnels. Most laughed nervously, refusing to discuss it seriously. But one evening, as Ethan lingered at a dimly lit bar near the outskirts of town, an elderly man approached approached him. "You're digging into places best left alone," the old man rasped, introducing himself as Jed Harmon, a former city worker. "I've seen what lurks down there. Not many who've seen it can sleep again without nightmares." Ethan felt his pulse quicken. "Tell me everything," he urged. Jed leaned in closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "It lives in the old central drain beneath Oak Street. There are tunnels down there from before Riverton even existed. Something woke it up years ago when they expanded the drainage systems. It doesn't like intruders. Takes them down to the deepest tunnels where nobody ever finds them." "You've seen it yourself?" Ethan asked cautiously. Jed's wrinkled hands trembled slightly. 30 years ago, when I worked maintenance, I heard voices, echoes, whispers in the dark. Then I saw it. A thing out of nightmare. Pale, smiling, hungry. Barely got out myself. Ethan thanked Jed and, despite the old man's warnings, was resolved more than ever. The truth needed uncovering. The very next night, armed only with a flashlight, camera, and his growing dread, Ethan located an access point off Oak Street just past midnight. Rain had softened to drizzle as Ethan descended through the manhole into the tunnel beneath. The darkness engulfed him immediately. He clicked on his flashlight, illuminating grimy walls coated with decades of mildew and decay. The stale air, foul and oppressive, wrapped around him like a shroud. Ethan pressed forward cautiously, boots splashing softly through puddles, the tunnel echoing each step ominously. Minutes stretched into eternity as he moved deeper. Strange whispers trickled around him, barely perceptible at first, growing steadily clearer. Voices pleading, whispering unintelligible words. Ethan tried to dismiss them as paranoia, echoes bouncing off walls. But when the whispers sharpened into clear, agonized cries of help, his blood turned to ice. He stopped abruptly, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Hello," he called weakly. The voices ceased instantly. All Ethan heard now was his rapid breathing, the thumping of his heart echoing loudly in the stillness. Suddenly, behind him, a rustling. Ethan spun, flashlight slicing through blackness. Nothing but shadows. He steadied himself, breath shallow. Another rustle. Ahead this time. Something scuttled, too swift and agile for a rat. Ethan's hands shook as he crept forward, forcing himself onward despite terror's cold grip. Then he saw it. Ahead, the tunnel widened into a larger chamber, illuminated faintly by the flickering beam of his flashlight. A figure stood unnaturally still, tall, impossibly slender, skin pale, almost translucent. Ethan froze, heart hammering violently. The hollow, he breathed, voice barely audible. Slowly its head turned toward him, movements grotesque, jerking, unnatural. Ethan's flashlight beam caught its face, eyes empty, bottomless black pits, mouth stretched impossibly wide into a chilling, permanent smile filled with rows of sharpened teeth. The creature lurched forward, its limbs distorting grotesquely, moving rapidly, fluidly toward him. Ethan stumbled backward, panic overwhelming his senses. He turned blindly, sprinting through the darkness, hearing behind him the sickening sound of wet footsteps closing in. His lungs burned, vision blurred by terror and exertion, until finally he collided violently with a rusted ladder, nearly losing his footing. Scrambling desperately upward, he emerged onto rain-slicked pavement, rolling aside just as pale fingers clawed at his ankles, missing by inches. Ethan slammed the heavy iron cover back into place, heart hammering furiously. Gasping on his knees, drenched in sweat and fear, Ethan understood now why the legend had endured for so long. The hollow was real. He knew he had barely survived. Over the following days, Ethan frantically tried to warn the authorities, but none believed him. They dismissed his story as delusions, a publicity stunt, or worse, madness. Ethan, haunted nightly by the grinning face beneath Riverton, knew better. Weeks passed, Halloween came and went, and Riverton began to forget Ethan's claims. Life returned to normal. People dismissed his frantic warnings as nonsense. But beneath the town, in the darkness of its tunnels, the hollow stirred more eagerly, awakened fully by Ethan's intrusion. It had tasted fear again after years of silence, and now it hungered for more. Soon, new reports filtered quietly into town gossip. Pets disappearing near drains, strange sounds from beneath the streets. And one dark, stormy evening, Jed Harmon vanished without a trace. Only Ethan understood fully what was happening. He packed his things, preparing to flee Riverton forever, burdened by the horrifying knowledge that nobody was safe. As he left town, Ethan stopped briefly near the Oak Street storm drain. Rain battered his windshield, visibility fading into gray oblivion. He couldn't resist one final glance at the iron grate. Through the cascading rain, two black, empty eyes watched him steadily from the shadows below, smiling horribly, eternally patient, eternally hungry, as if promising that someday, no matter where he ran, the hollow would find him again. I hope you've already drifted off into a peaceful sleep. If not, I truly hope the upcoming stories on my channel will help you get there. If you enjoyed this one, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I'd be so happy if you liked and shared this video with your friends. It means a lot and gives me the encouragement to keep creating more stories like this.